Hello, Julie here and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I am going to show you how I make another 5 flowers. I made a video earlier that showed 5 other flowers using dies. These are all using dies as well. So I'll put a link to the previous video in the description box below if you want to check that out. But today we're going to make 5 flowers. I'm going to start off with this poinsettia die. The flower that I end up making with this is about 2.5 inches in diameter. You can do this in different colours other than red, of course, and then it wouldn't look to be a poinsettia, but I'm doing it in red, and I'm actually doing it so that it doesn't look like a poinsettia anyway. Poinsettias tend to curl under, where I am curling this one over. So I'm using my ball flower shaping tools, and I'm simply going around in a circular motion on each of those petals. Now you can see there that my tools come in a set of 4, the round ones with the balls on the end, and the balls are all different sizes. So depending on the size of your petal, which actual tool you use. You want it to be a bit smaller than your petal so that you can move your ball around and actually make some shape. The thing that you also need is a soft mat, and in this particular case that's a old stubby holder that I have cut the bottom out of and then cut up the side, and that's got plenty of sponginess to it and allows the flowers to shape really nicely. Before I started this video, I die cut all of my flowers, and I also inked around the edge of all of them. Some of them I inked around the edge with the same colour as the paper. In this case I did ink around it with a red. It's just about perfectly the same colour as the paper, which is not really my intention. I prefer to use a darker shade of the colour so that it stands out more. And if I don't use the same colour, like a darker shade of the same colour, I'll generally use a black. But I thought in this particular case I would go with the coloured edges, because in my previous video I did use black ink. So yeah, you'll see the difference if you have a look at that video. So I'm just going to fast forward this a bit now, and once all the shaping's done I'll come back to you. I'm now to start assembling the flower itself. To do this, when I'm making flowers, I will 99% of the time use liquid glue. I will sometimes use my hot glue gun, but generally I will use liquid glue. If it's really heavy materials, or if I'm trying to attach metals or large gems or something like that to them, I will use my hot glue gun, but generally I'll use my liquid glue, and I use art glitter glue just about exclusively now because I find it works so well. Anyway, what I'm doing here is I'm layering those layers of each of those different size flowers. So I've actually cut 2 of each size because there's 4 sizes, and I've cut 2 of each, which means there's going to be 8 layers in this flower. And as I layer them on top of each other with the glue, I try to make sure that I'm offsetting each layer so that it doesn't lay on top of the previous layer. It sort of is offset. It makes your flower look fuller, and you know, if you look at a flower in nature, their petals don't line up exactly. So that's how I tend to assemble all of my flowers. Then I will also take that flower once it's assembled, put it back on top of my stubby holder, and I will generally push it into the centre. Now sometimes I use this poker tool that I'm using here, or sometimes I'll use one of the ball tools, push down in the middle with one of those and sort of work it around. But yeah, it depends on what flower I'm making and what I'm going for. This flower comes with leaves, or this die comes with leaves, so I've cut leaves as well. Generally I won't attach the leaves to the flower until I'm ready to attach it to my project, because then I like to find out what suits the card or layout or whatever it is for the positioning of the leaves, so generally I won't attach the leaves at this stage, but tonight I will attach 2 leaves to this flower. My next flower is cut using this Kaisercraft DD707 layered flowers. It comes with the 2 flowers in it and 1 leaf. So what I've done is I've cut 2 layers of each. No, I haven't actually. I've cut 3 layers of the larger one and 2 of the smaller one. Now this one actually has got brown ink around the edge. I did that before I decided to start using the colour of the paper. All of them are cut from pattern paper, so anyway, this one I'm shaping a bit differently to the last one. So what I'm doing here, you can see, is I'm just using the edge of my bone folder and sort of pulling, without pulling the petal off, pulling from underneath the petal towards myself, really, just in a U shape. I suppose would be the easiest way to say it. So I'm doing that for each and every petal on all of those layers. Then I'm going to bring back my stubby holder and my liquid glue and start assembling this flower. This flower, when it's assembled, is about 2 inches in diameter, so quite a nice little size for both layouts and cards. I'm actually quite partial to this Kaiser die. I use it quite often. Anyway, so I'm doing the same thing. I'm putting each layer on top of the one before it, offsetting the petals, and once I get all of my layers on top of each other and glued, I will use my poker tool, I think, paper piercing tool, to push down in the centre of this, and that, by pushing down, it really helps to lift your petals up and give your flower a nice shape. Oh no, it appears that I decide to use my flower shaping tool to press down in the centre for this one. I'm going to add a couple of leaves to this one as well. So now I'm going to create the flower, the second flower that comes in that die, and to do this flower I have actually taken my scissors and cut down deeper in towards the centre on the edge of each one of those petals. Now don't be careful, make sure you don't cut right through to the centre, so we still want all of our petals attached. The technique for shaping this flower is to use my paper piercer and roll the outside edges down over the edge, or around my paper piercer, so we're getting a nice rounded edge on each one of those petals. For this flower I have also cut two of each size of the petals, and this one's going to make a flower that's about 2 3/4 inches square, 2 3/4 inches in diameter. I'm going to use my art glitter glue and exactly the same technique to assemble my flower. Once again, once I've got all the layers sitting on top of each other, I'll push down in the centre to lift those petals up. I add a bit of interest to the centre of each of my flowers in different ways. For the mauve flower, I'm going to use these pearls that are sitting inside of a gold ring. They are a sticker, but I always add more glue when I'm putting something that's supposed to be self-adhesive, the gems and all those sorts of things. Unless it's a brad that goes through the flower centre, I will add extra glue to it. So I'm going to add that pearl to the mauve flower, and I'm going to just add a clear gem to the blue and white flower. Now I'm going to use the die that you can see here. It's got 10 layers to the flower. I don't know the brand of it or what it's called. I've thrown the packaging away for that flower. But previously I've told you that I ink around everything, and now this particular flower I'm going to not ink around it, so that you can see the difference between inking around it and not inking around it, and see what you prefer. So the first two flowers I'm going to make are exactly the same as each other, except one's got ink around the edge and one hasn't. They're both going to use 3 layers. Now, as I said, there's 10 layers in this die. You can mess around with these and make whatever size flower you like. I think the biggest one is about 2¼ inches, and the smallest one, as you can see, is minuscule, and I've made one that you'll see shortly that's about 1/2 inch. So I'm using the same technique that I used for the poinsettia flower, except this time I'm doing the shaping from the back, and you can see how that makes the petals sort of puff up in the front center. So the edges curl to the back and the center of the petal rolls to the front. So I'm going to do that for these 3 layers, and then I'm going to assemble that using my art glitter glue, and you'll be able to see what it looks like if I don't ink around the edges. Now I'm going to go ahead and assemble exactly the same number of layers, exactly the same size, exactly the same technique, and I will give you a comparison of the two once I've got that finished. So there we have them. I think the one with the inking around the edge is much more interesting, much more defined, and yeah, it looks more lifelike. So I went ahead and assembled all the rest of those layers that I had there, and I ended up making 5 flowers, one being a little tiny 1/2 inch one. I ended up adding gems to the centre of those, except for the little tiny one I added some gold glitter. So for my last flower for today, I'm going to use this Cheery Lynn B311 chrysanthemum strip die. I'm going to use the same technique that I used on that first one from the Kaisercraft die, where I'm rolling the petal. In this case I'm not using my bone folder, I'm using my paper piercer. Because these leaves are a lot finer, I'm trying to make sure I get a good curl, and to do that I'm using a smaller diameter utensil. Because the leaves are much finer, it is a lot easier to tear a petal off, not a leaf, a petal off. So yes, be aware of that. I try to always hold them at the bottom and make sure that I don't pull too hard. Now this die cuts 6 of the flowers. You can choose whether you use 3 and make 2 flowers, or whether you use all 6 on one. This is one of my favourite dies. I love this flower, and I always tend to use all 6 layers on one flower. In my last video I also created a spiky flower. This is what I call a spiky flower because it's not the rounded sort of petals, and I always like to include one spiky flower in my collection of flowers, or my little cluster of flowers, and this one is one of my favourites. So I'm going to shape all of those petals, and then I'm going to assemble it in the same way that I've assembled all of the others, that is with my art glitter glue, and staggering the layers on top of each other so that they don't overlap, or so that they're nicely staggered. To finish this flower off, I added a pop of colour in gold to the centre. So a pop of colour is like a Stickles, same sort of thing, but just a different brand. So there we have all of our flowers for today. I hope you've enjoyed watching the video, and you've got a few tips on how to create some nicely shaped flowers if you make your own. I will put a link to the other flower making video using dies in the description box, and I'll also put a link to any of the products that I've used that are still available, because I've had these dies for some time, so they may not still be available. Yeah, so thank you for being here with me today. If you're not already a subscriber, I'd love it if you subscribe to my channel, and if you give me a thumbs up, that is great for my channel. So please do that, and I hope you can join me when I post my next video.